Today is Wednesday, February 5th. We're talking about President Trump's plan to take over and own Gaza, how the world is responding to his surprising redevelopment plan. Also, a trade war is heating up between the U.S. and China, what's expected to get more expensive because of it. Plus, where an ice storm is set to impact millions of Americans, why entire school districts are shutting down in parts of the country, and how much people are spending to go to this year's Super Bowl. Those stories and even more news to know coming up.
Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this.
President Trump shocked the world this week with a new plan to own the Gaza Strip. In other words, the same president who campaigned on shrinking America's role abroad actually wants to take long-term control over a war-torn territory. Trump says he wants all the 2 million Palestinians who live there to be relocated and for the enclave to be built into the, quote, Riviera of the Middle East. The president's aides say it could take 10 to 15 years, and Trump says he's not ruling out sending in American troops to get it done. Still, it could be extremely tough. Arab nations are strongly against the idea of evacuating Gaza or taking away any Palestinian land. And Mideast experts say any attempt to take Gaza out of Palestinian hands would likely be met with attacks. Even many of Trump's Republican allies in Congress are skeptical of how it would all work. But Trump says it's a plan that could bring stability to the entire Middle East as he plans to turn Gaza into a territory for, quote, the world's people. This is actually a turnaround for Trump, too, who back in 2020 called for a Palestinian state, much like other American presidents have. When asked about that, Trump told reporters, quote, a lot of plans change with time. He's expected to talk about it more when the leaders of Jordan and Egypt visit the White House for talks later this month. In the meantime, Israel and Hamas are still negotiating the next phase of a ceasefire in Gaza. For now, Trump just says he's not sure whether the deal will survive, but there's clearly a lot left to be sorted out one way or another. The U.S. Postal Service is no longer accepting packages from China and Hong Kong. And that's a big deal, since the U.S. imports millions of Chinese packages a day with little customs inspection and no duties collected. For now, the USPS just says it's a temporary suspension, and it did not give a reason for the decision. But it did come the same day President Trump's executive order about tariffs went into effect. As you know, Trump announced tariffs in hopes of keeping deadly opioids from coming into the U.S., and even though the White House made deals with Canada and Mexico to delay the action, no such agreement was made with China. So Trump went ahead and imposed an extra 10% tariff on all Chinese imports. The order also says all packages need to include detailed information about what's inside. Americans are not expected to see a difference right away, but some economists say the extra costs will mean price increases in the months ahead, especially for things like electronics, toys, and generic drugs. By the way, it took just minutes after President Trump imposed tariffs for China to retaliate. The Chinese government announced 15% tariffs on American coal and liquefied natural gas, as well as 10% tariffs on crude oil, farm equipment, and other vehicles. Chinese President Xi reached out to Trump about the tit for tat, but at last check, no call has been scheduled. As promised, the Trump administration has started flying migrants into Guantanamo Bay. Remember, the U.S. naval base at Guantanamo has always had a facility to detain some migrants, typically when they're caught at sea. At this point, it's only equipped to hold 120 migrants, but the Trump administration plans to expand operations so it can hold up to 30,000. Hundreds of Marines have been sent to Guantanamo to help set things up, like tents and other infrastructure. The military is helping in other ways, too. For example, yesterday's flight was on a C-17 military jet. Those jets have also been used for other routine deportations under Trump to countries in Latin America and also to India. Though it's not clear why. It costs $28,500 an hour to fly a C-17. That's more than 5 times what it would cost to fly migrants first class on American Airlines. It's also much higher than a standard U.S. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement flight. At this point, the Trump administration has not said why it's opting for the military flight option, but many more are planned in the days and weeks to come. President Trump is facing a wave of new lawsuits from people within his own government. For example, a group of FBI agents. They want to keep the Trump administration from releasing their names or the names of other employees who worked on Capitol riot investigations. They worry about the danger it could bring them or their families. Already, the FBI gave the Justice Department details of more than 5,000 employees who worked on the January 6th cases. Those details include employee ID numbers, job titles, and their roles in the investigations, but not their names. At this point, it's not clear what the DOJ plans to do with that information, but it could get some input from the brand new boss. The U.S. Senate confirmed Pam Bondi as Attorney General yesterday. During her confirmation hearing, she promised not to use the position to advance any political agenda. There's a growing movement of Americans looking to speak out against the Trump administration. Today, there are demonstrations planned all around the country. They're called 50-51 protests, meaning 50 protests in 50 states in one day. Activists on social media have been calling on people to show up at their state capitals if they're unhappy with the direction the country is going. Different posts have brought up different issues, from immigration to public health and safety and a lot more. And they've made it clear Democrats, Republicans, and everyone else is welcome. But, of course, not everyone is unhappy with how things are going so far. In fact, Real Clear Politics published a tracker that shows President Trump now has the highest favorability rating he's ever had. Other polls, like from YouGov and The Economist and others, also show nearly half of Americans polled support Trump's terms so far. And while that's a lower approval rating than other presidents this soon after their election, it's higher than Trump's was back in 2017. More news is still coming up, but first, a quick break. Thanks to our sponsor, Quince. Who doesn't love the good things in life? I enjoy treating myself to a little luxury here and there, though I also don't want to feel guilty for overspending. And that's where Quince comes in. Quince offers a range of high-quality items at prices within reach, like 100% Mongolian cashmere sweaters from just $50. In fact, I recently got a wool quarter-zip pullover sweater that I adore. It's so soft, warm, and goes with everything. I can throw it on for everyday errands or go out to dinner in it. And you know, I love my Quince washable silk tank. They even have 14-karat gold jewelry. And the best part, all of Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. By partnering directly with top factories, Quince cuts out the cost of the middleman and passes those savings on to us. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. So I love that. Give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/newsworthy for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/newsworthy to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/newsworthy. Now back to the news. It's the mildest winter yet for COVID-19 in the U.S. The CDC says the COVID hospitalization rate is about half of what it was last year. And deaths are down too. As for why, infectious disease specialists say it's possible Americans still have some immunity from a surge over the summer. Plus, this year's vaccine was apparently a good match for the variant that's been circulating. Either way, experts say this is a good sign for the long-term future of the virus. However, RSV cases have also been circulating a lot the last couple of months, though the CDC says they now seem to be trending downward. And flu cases are still surging. The CDC estimates there have been tens of millions of cases in the U.S. so far this season. Many hospitals are overwhelmed and are having to limit visitors. Pharmacies have even been running out of Tamiflu. And in parts of the country, like Texas and Oklahoma, entire school districts have had to shut down. The CDC is still encouraging vaccines, even this late in the season. Another major winter storm is set to bring ice and snow to millions of Americans. Today, it's expected to span from the Midwest to the Great Lakes to the Mid-Atlantic, with roads becoming especially slick. Then tomorrow, forecasts show it continuing into the Northeast. And the National Weather Service is telling people to prepare for power outages. All the while, it will be unseasonably warm across the South, from Texas to South Carolina. We're talking more than 30 degrees above normal for this time of year. In fact, some places could see temps reach the 80s. In New Orleans, that's especially good news with hundreds of thousands of sports fans coming into town to watch the Super Bowl. It's expected to be in the 70s for the big game with mostly clear skies. For the first time in 4 years, the message "End Racism" will not be written on the end zone at the Super Bowl. But in the face of rumors and concerns, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell made it clear it's not because of any kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion changes. In fact, he says DEI makes the league better, so there are no plans to scale back. An NFL spokesperson says the decision was actually made as a way to be sensitive to recent tragedies, like wildfires in California and plane crashes in Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia. So instead of "End Racism," one end zone will feature the message "Choose Love." The other will read, "It takes all of us." Tickets for this year's Super Bowl are selling at a major discount, relatively speaking, of course. The cheapest ticket to see the Chiefs play the Eagles on Sunday fell below $4,000 for a single seat. That's obviously still a lot of money, but overall tickets are 50% cheaper than last year, which set a record for cost. And prices this year are still falling, with a 30% decline over the past week. Industry analysts point to a few reasons for the drop-off. Last year's game was the first time ever Las Vegas hosted a Super Bowl, increasing the appeal. And Las Vegas's stadium has around 10,000 fewer seats than the New Orleans Superdome, limiting supply. But the biggest reason of all might be one of the teams. The Chiefs are in their third straight Super Bowl, and some analysts think fans are just tired of seeing them every year. Of course, there's also the option of watching the game for free at home. The Super Bowl airs on Fox this Sunday, and in a first, it's going to be streaming for free on Tubi. And that's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Work Wednesday, when we break down one interesting career or work-related news story every Wednesday. But first, this episode is sponsored by Wildgrain. Wildgrain is the first bake-from-frozen subscription box for artisanal breads, pastries, and pastas. Best of all, Wildgrain takes the hassle out of baking, since all items bake from frozen in 25 minutes or less with no mess or cleanup. That's right, I've grabbed a beautiful loaf of sourdough or some slow-fermented olive oil ciabatta, thrown it in the oven for 25 minutes or less, creating a delicious smell throughout the house, by the way, and put it out for family and friends to enjoy. So easy, yet such a delight. Not to mention their chocolate croissants, fresh pastas, giant chocolate chunk cookies, and more. So are you ready to bring all your favorite carbs right to your doorstep? Be sure to check out Wildgrain so you can begin building your own box of artisanal breads, pastas, and pastries. For a limited time, Wildgrain is offering our listeners $30 off the first box, plus free croissants in every box when you go to wildgrain.com/newsworthy to start your subscription. You heard me, free croissants in every box and $30 off your first box when you go to wildgrain.com/newsworthy. That's wildgrain.com/newsworthy, or you can use the promo code newsworthy at checkout. Now back to Work Wednesday. Well, tens of thousands of Americans are about to be out of jobs. Already about 20,000 federal workers have accepted the Trump administration's offer to resign. And the White House says the largest spike of resignations is still expected to come today and tomorrow. Remember, nearly all government employees were told they can stop working almost immediately, but keep getting paychecks through the end of September. And yesterday, the CIA offered the same buyout to its entire workforce, making it the first major national security agency to fall in line with Trump's downsizing plans. But critics, including unions, have urged employees not to take the deal, saying there's no real guarantee they really will get their severance payments, especially if the offer gets challenged in courts. And this week, even more concerns were brought up when employees started getting the contract they have to sign to accept the offer. It says if they take it, they waive their right to legal action. That said, many employees still think the deal is a good one, since a lot of government workers are expected to be laid off without any kind of buyout. The offer is still open through tomorrow, and the White House is expecting thousands more people to take it. Thank you so much for listening today and for sharing the show if you find it valuable. We'll be back with more news to know tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.